No. Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Samach Vav in Nidrim, as we learned today's yard site for a Ilu Neshama of Rav Yechiel ben Rav Paltiel Halevi Landau, whose yard site is today. Says the Mishnah, Poskim Yom Tovim, as an opening that the court, that the bezdin or the rabbi has to use to relieve a person of his neder. You could also use things like Yom Tov and Shabbos. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? That a person says he's not going to have meat, let's say, for the next month. No meat, no wine. And they tell him, well, had you known that on Shabbos and Yom Tov, it's forbidden to abstain from meat and wine, especially on Yom Tov. So had you known that you're not allowed to restrain from eating those foods on Shabbos and Yom Tov, would you have made the neder? And he says, no, I didn't realize that. That's also a good Pesach. We assume he's telling the truth. So let's say he said, I'm not going to eat meat for a year or a month, whatever. And then they gave him a Pesach, and they said, well, hey, you can't abstain from eating meat and wine on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Oh, had I known that, I wouldn't have made the neder. So are only those days exempt from his neder, and the other days would remain? That's what they used to say. Okay, so on Shabbos and Yom Tov you can eat because the rabbi relieves you of your neder for those days, but the other days during the week you still can't eat, whether you've made it for a year or a month, whatever. Our Gemara has the girsa neder shehuta mechlolo. If a neder has been relieved or taken away or been permitted from its general rule, the Mishnah, the Mishnah is miktsasa, neder shehuta miktsasa hatakula. If part of it has been relieved, then the whole thing is relieved. The lashon in our Gemara is shehuta mechlola, from its general category. If a neder was partially removed from its category, then the whole thing is permitted. Right, the Ran brings down from the Yerushalmi that it says, if you can fulfill everything in your neder, in other words, there's no breaking it up. If you said, I'm not going to eat meat and drink wine for a full year, and then they were matter, well, Shabbos and Yom Tov, you were matter neder for Shabbos and Yom Tov, so the other days would be forbidden still? No. Once part of the neder has been relieved, the whole neder has been relieved. That's what we mean of a sheneder hutz mechlolo. Part of it, again, the lashon in our Gemara is mechlolo, but in the Mishnayos it's this neder shehuta miktsasa, and that's the gears that we had before back on chafei chavav, neder shehuta miktsasa or hatakulo. If part of it has been relieved or permitted or opened, whatever lashon you want to use, then the whole thing is permitted. Ketsa, example of this. Amar konim she'eni neder kuchmen says, I'm not going to give any anah. None of you can have enough meat. And then it turns out puter echad man, he was mater for one of them. Now, whether that was via a neder, via the rabbi being permitted part of it, let's say for this person you permitted, and whether it's via a rabbi or whether it was a mistake. For example, he said, all of you found somebody eating his food, and he says, okay, all you guys can't eat my food. Then he realized one of the people in the group was his father or his brother, and he didn't mean to include them. That was a mistake. So whether the neder is mutter because on part of the group because of a mistake, or whether it was permitted by the rabbi. Either way, we say neder shehuta miktsasa hatakula.
Why don't we say that it was a neder that was a mistake?
Okay, so it depends. I said either way. No, either way. If it was a mistake, if part of it was a mistake, then the whole thing is been relieved. Or even if it wasn't a mistake and the rabbi permitted it for part of it, for example, matur for Shabbos and Yom Tov, then the whole thing is permitted either way. Let's say he said, I'm not giving, let's say there were 10 people there, and he said, I'm not going to, number one can't have enough for me, and number two is like number one, and number three is like number two, and number four is like number three, and he did one dependent on the other one. He didn't just say a whole group, he just said, you can't have enough for me, number one, and number two is like number one, and number three is like number two, and so on. If the first guy is mutter hutakula, in other words, once he's matter one of them, because in this case he didn't do it as a whole group. He said, you, number one, you can't have enough of me. Then he said, number two, you're like number one. Number three is like number two. Now, if he's matter neder for number one, it's like dominoes; they all fall down because once number one is mutter, number two is like number one. So that's what he means. If the last one, let's say number 10, you got a net at number 10. So then number 1 through 9 are still valid, but each one's a separate netter. And then he goes over in the gears in the parentheses, Hutter Mitzoif, let's say number 5 was mutter, hey menal lamata mutter, so 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are mutter, hey menal lamal usher, but 4, 3, 2, and 1 would still be usher. She'eni nehena lazeh carbon lazek. I'm not giving you a knot, and each one is a separate netter. Each one is an individual netter, and you need an opening for each one. Now, let's say in this case, he says, I'm not going to drink any wine. I'm not going to drink any wine. I'm not going to drink because wine is bad for the innards. Old aged wine is good. Yain Yashen is considered from last year, like it's 2-year-old wine. Miyushan is 3-year-old wine. Aged wine was considered to be good. So he says, "Hello, Miyushan Yafalim, that's good for your abdomen, for your stomach." Says Hutter Miyushan, so he's mutter for the old one. Not only the old one, not only the aged wine. All wine is mutter. Why? Because netter should kulo. If you make a netter and part of it has become relieved, part of it has become permitted, then or annulled, whatever lashon you want to use, then it's all permitted. So over here in this case, again, whether we say it was via a Pesach that the rabbi said to him, you didn't mean to include Shabbos and Yom Tov, did you? And then that's mutter, the rest of us mutter, or whether he made a mistake, or let's say he meant it was a mistake, like he said, all 10 of you can't eat my food. And then he realized one of them was his father. That was a mistake. So if he made a special netter for each and every one of them, then each one of them needs a Pesach. Let's say he says over here, in this case, of the wine, I'm not going to drink any wine. Wine's bad for you. They said, what do you mean? Aged wine is good for you. They told him, notice the lashon. He said, I'm not going to drink any wine because wine is bad for you. All they had to really say was, wine isn't bad for you. It's like Diet Coke. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just whatever you like, right? They said, no, wine is good for you. We're going to talk about that in the Gemara. So he can have old age wine. So here was a mistake. In other words, here it wasn't they had to be matzah netter. You didn't really mean to include that. He said, I'm not drinking wine because wine is bad for you. Oh, because wine is bad for you. Then it turned out it was based on mistake. Like he was including his father. It was a mistake. He didn't mean to include his father. He didn't mean to include. He only meant it because of that. So that's a mistake. That's again a netter. That's like a netter shogeg. That's not a case where he had before, where it's no lot. What was the case of no we had before? I'm not going to ever go into that house. Turns out that the house was built and made into a shul. Or I'm not going to have anything to do with that guy. He's a jerk. Turns out he went and got smicha and he became a Talmud Chacham. Now he wants it. That's no lot. No lot, we said, not like Reb Lezer, we said no lot is not a good heter. No lot itself is not a heter because he couldn't have anticipated that. But this was a mistake. I'm forbidding myself wine because wine is bad. No, not all wine. Not all wine is bad. Some wine is good for you. Oh, so it was a mistake. And the same thing with onions. I'm not going to have any onions. It's bad for the heart. Just the opposite. There's a kind of an onion, a kind of kufri onion, which is good for you. So therefore, you didn't mean to include that. He's but not only kufri onions are good. All onions are good, are okay to eat. Why? Because the story it was a Maisa where a mayor confirmed that idea. He made a mistake by saying, I'm not going to have onions because onions are bad for you. Some onions are good for you. And because the netter was mutter, was a mistake, it was a mistake. Not that he had to go to a Talmud Chacham. Rav Meir was materit. In that case, Rav Meir was materit. But the truth is, because some onions are good for you, the netter was a mistake to begin with. Part of it, at least, it was a mistake. And netter therefore you can eat any kind of onion. Now, the Mishnah said that it's a difference between saying when you made a mistake on part of it versus where you said each individual, this guy's usher, this guy's usher. So he said hutter achron achron mutter v'kul and asuran because they depended mantana. So from the lashon in the Mishnah in the Gemara, it sounds like mantana who's going on those words hutter achron mutter v'kul. But the truth is that's really not the issue. The issue, because since you made each one dependent, when you had 10 people in a row, you said, you can't have any off me number one. Number two is like number one. Number three is like number two. If you're matzah the last one's mutter, not the others, because they're individual nadarim, but you made one dependent on the other. So the Rashi explains a little bit clearer than the Ran, that the Mishnah says that Mish Amar Mastis and the Mishavi Chiluk makes a chiluk bain Hechadomer Kulchem Hechadomer Zekor and Zekor, and the Mishnah makes it different between if you said all of them together versus individuals. Who's our Mishnah Golik Montana Rav Shimoni goes like Shim Domer Achi Amar Shmuel Kolech Shimon argues somewhere else when to 5 people argue and they tell him you know we gave you money and he swears to all of them that he didn't take any money from him, and he turned out he was lying, and he's chayav for a shvua. He's not chayav for 5 shvuas unless he said shvua to each and every one of them. In other words, there's a difference between saying all of you, and if you said all of you, neder shmuzasor tekulo, versus saying each individual, make a neder for each individual. That's from Shimon's shita, that it's one neder, it's one shvua for everybody, and therefore hutim mitzasor tekulo, unless you said an individual neder for each and every one. That's what our Mishnah said. And when if he said kulchem, then if he's matter one of them, they're all mutter. But if he says individually for each and every one, then each one has to be mutter. If he made them dependent one on the other, like 2 is number 1 and 3 is like number 2, then it depends on which one he's matter. If he's matter number 1, they all fall away. If he's matter number 10, only number 10 is mutter. If he was matter any ones in the middle, the ones below that are mutter, the ones above are not. So in our Mishnah we said if he made a netter that he's not going to have any wine. And then, because wine is bad for you. And then he said, what do you mean? Wine, some certain wines are good for you. Aged wine is good for you. So it was a mistake, right? So they said, well, wine is good for you, but typically they ain't right. They don't have to show. The mistake is that he said wine is bad for you. Okay, if wine is not bad for you, just say wine is parv. It's not good, it's not bad. That's enough to make it a mistake. Why does he have to say wine is good for you, but typically they ain't right? Number 1, it's not bad. Number 2, certain wines are good for you. So it's a double reason. It's not only is it not bad is enough to say that you made a mistake. But not only that, it's also good for you. Same thing with the onions. But typically they ain't just say that the onions aren't bad for you. In other words, not only is wine not bad for you, but certain wines are good for you. Not only are onions not bad for you, but certain onions are good for you. That's what he means to say. It doesn't mean to say that only because it's good for you that was a mistake. The mistake was when you said it's bad for you. Those things aren't bad for you. God wouldn't have given us wine or onions if they were bad for us, right? Okay. Says the Mishnah, another Pesach, we're talking about Pesachim, openings that the rabbi, the Bezdin can use to annul your neder. And this is important. I want to use the word annul because, again, we've said this many times, that rabbi annuls the neder milachachila, like you annul a marriage. Annul a marriage is not a get. You're not divorced from today. When they annul it, it's lumafreya. It's totally from the beginning. Same thing with the rabbi. Why is that important? Because we're going to talk about tomorrow's daf. We're going to talk about nar marasa, how a father can break his daughter's neder. That's on mikano laba. That's hafara. Gemara many times uses the lashon interchangeably, hatorah or hafara. But hatorah means you're matzah the neder, you annul it milachachila. You make it void as if it never happened. Whereas hafara sadarm is only mikano laba. Okay. Anyway, we'll talk about that starting tomorrow. But this mission is still talking about Pesach. So Pasal Adam becovered Atzmo. An opening that rabbi could use is your own honor, or becovered one of his children. They said, let's say a man said he forbade his wife from having an annul from him. And what's the result of that? That he has to divorce her because it's impossible for her to live with him without having pleasure from him. So he has to divorce her. And they tell her, well, listen, had you known, he's looking for a Pesach, he's an angry person, he forbade his wife from having an annul from him. Says, had you known, had you known, tomorrow people are going to say about you, that's your habit. He divorces his wife, about your daughters, people will say, Benos Garosha, saying, oh, they're the daughters of divorcee. It doesn't help for a shidduch when they say she's the daughter of a divorcee. It doesn't help, right? Would you have made the neder had you known people are going to say those things about you and about your daughters? Ma Rosa, or the gear says, Ma Ra B'iman. What did this guy see in these girls' mother, Shal Elu's Lisgarish, that he divorced her? Right? What bad thing did he see? The lashon of Ma Ra Sa'iman Shal Lisgarish sounds like what why did she want to get divorced? But since a man divorced the wife, the shot is, and the gears on the side is, what did he see in their mother that he went to divorce her? Probably she was a loose woman. She was maybe adulterous. And people are going to say that about maybe you're not going to care about your wife anymore, but you're going to say that about your children. Pardon?
She was a bad cook.
She was a bad cook, right? Yeah, they're not going to say that. They're going to say there must have been some pagam there. Maybe she was an adulteress. Maybe the children are not her children. Maybe they're not his children. Maybe they're mamzerim. And he says, had I known that, Shekain, had I realized that they're going to say those things about me, Loisin, I wouldn't have made such an error. A raise a mutter, that's also good as circum. Come Shani knows his bonus. Now we mentioned this already before. We had this the other day. He says, I'm not going to marry this girl, Kura. She is ugly. All right, it turns out he made a mistake. Again, here we're talking about making a mistake in the neder, right? Like the case before we brought down the case of Kulchem, and among them was his father, so that was a mistake. And that is just a Hatakula. But here we're talking about simply you made a mistake. He says, I'm not going to marry that girl because she's ugly. It turns out you're wrong. You got a bad picture. They sent you with the wrong picture. Or I thought she was darker, very low, she's light, she's white. So she's short, very yocha, she's tall, she's nice looking. So in those cases, mutarba, he's allowed to marry. Not because she had an operation or had her face fixed or something like that, not because she was improved, or she turned, they whitened her in some way, or she became taller. I don't know, maybe she was short, maybe she grew. It was a mistake. In other words, in that case, we're saying when he makes a netter and he was mistaken in the netter, that's called like a netter b'shogeg. It's not a netter at all. You don't need a rabbi to permit it. It's not a netter at all. Then he tells it, in other words, it's only if he made a mistake. If she was though beautified later on, let's say she had no teeth and she went and got her teeth fixed, or she had a nose job or something like that, and she was improved, that's already no lie. That's different. We're talking about where he made a mistake. Now he tells you a story, L'chor with no. The Gemara is going to ask about this. L'chor, the story is not in sync with what we just said. There was a story of that woman. There was a man, they wanted him to marry his niece. As we said before, it's a mitzvah to marry your niece, right? And they wanted to marry his niece, and he didn't want to. So what he did was, he says, she can't have any enough from me. I can't marry her. They brought her into the house of Rav Shmuel, and they beautified her. Rav Shmuel beautified her. We'll see what he gave her a new set of teeth, whatever. He beautified her. Amalo, Rav Shmuel Beni. Rav Shmuel then took out this niece of this guy, and he went to this man, to the uncle, and he said, Beni, Mizuna Darta, if you make an edit, you're not going to have enough from this girl. Isn't she pretty? Amalo Lav, no, I didn't mean that. I thought she was ugly. I didn't realize that she's so pretty. Amalo Lab. No, I didn't mean that. The Tir Rabbi Shmuel, and Rabbi Shmuel is mater. So in this case, Rabbi Shmuel beautified her, right? He improved her looks. And did you make an edit about her? Rabbi Shmuel is mater based on that. Now we'll see. Rabbi Shmuel is Gemara is going to say Rabbi Shmuel. This is not confirmed the story of a mistake. Mistake was I thought she was ugly and turned out she was beautiful. I made a mistake. It wasn't the case. I thought she was, 4'3", and turned out she was 5'3". Whatever it was a mistake. A mistake, you don't need Hatas Naram. Rabbi Shmuel was matzir in a case with Nola, really, because he changed her appearance. Okay, we'll see. At that time, Rabbi Shmuel cried, Omar, but Yisrael knows saying, all Jewish girls are beautiful. Elashanias Manavlasan. But the poverty makes them repulsive. They don't have money to beautify themselves, to get cleaned up, etc. When Shmuel died, the Jewish girls would eulogize him, they would lament him. But almost B'nos Yisrael would say about Rabbi Shmuel, Bechena, you should cry about him because he was the one who helped us. He had a beauty school for us. Bechena B'Shol, he just by Shol it all said B'nos Yisrael Al Shol Bechena. You should cry for Shol. Just telling you that the word Bechena is also said about. It's like a cry for him because he's no longer here. So the Gemara right away, Maisa Lister. We said in the Mishnah that if you made a mistake, your net was already mutter, right? You thought she was ugly, she was beautiful. You thought she was dark, turned out she was white. You thought she was short, turned out she was not short. She was a nice size. So in those cases, you don't need a Tashadarim. Then he says, but it's mashma that if you improved her looks, you did some operation, you did something to make her beautiful, that wouldn't be good. That would be like nolad. And then you tell a story with Rabbi Shmuel that nolad seems to work, Maisel Istor. So the story seems to contradict the halacha. The halacha was only if you made a mistake, but if she changed her looks, that would be nolad. Rabbi Shmuel went like the shita of Rabbi Lezer. No, not that you made a mistake. She was ugly, but she became pretty now. Or she turned out, you whitened her. I don't know, you put some polish on her or something, you made her lighter. You lengthened her and somehow, maybe you made her grow, you gave her some growth pills. Right? And even in a case like that, even Nola would also be mutter. And then the story goes on with Rabbi Shmuel, how this man made an error that he's not going to, that he can't, his niece cannot have any enough from her, or he can't have enough from her. Before, and he made her pretty. And he said, "Is this the one that you said that you're not going to marry her? That you made a net?" He says, "No, I didn't mean to make a net. I just see now she's beautiful." But that was no lie. In other words, says the Ran on the last line of the page. Sir Messerachtan, the last line of the page of the Ran. At the bottom there, Afilu Ka'ura Benasas laws, the Sfilei the Postmanola. Rabbi Shmuel held, like we learned Rabbi Lezer before, that you Pesach of Nola, even though circumstances changed, it's a new circumstance, it's a new condition, and something new happened over here. She changed her looks. The shul now changed, the house changed and became a shul. Or what were the other examples that we said? Or back in the Mishnah on Samach Daled. We said that I met it from this person and he turned out to be a rabbi. And later on, he became a rabbi, or he was making a wedding and you wanted to partake. And it was something new happened. A new circumstance happened over there. According to Chachamim, that's not a Pesach for Nola. Rabbi Shmuel held, like Rabbi Lezer, that it is a Pesach for Nola. So, Ein Hanami, with the Mishnah is saying, the beginning of the Mishnah says, only if you made a mistake. Then they had to, but if the situation changed, he beautified her. That's Nola. That wouldn't work. Rabbi Shmuel says Nola would work.
Tana.
Yeah. Question about Rabbi Shmuel.
Mm-hmm.
The Itgam, or whatever you would call it, where he says they're all beautiful. Milchatchila, they're beautiful. It's just that it's poverty, so he really hasn't done anything.
Yeah. You could argue that. That's a good point. Yeah, maybe
the Ram is focusing on the idea.
Yeah. He's saying they're all he's probably saying they're all basically beautiful. Basically, he's saying that they can all be beautified, right? And we'll make it up, but from the Gemara's mashma, from the Ran says that's no lot. That's no lot. That's no lot.
Why tell that part of
Yeah. He could say that he didn't really. So we're going to see now. We're going to see now from the next couple lines, maybe we'll answer your question. Tana, Shein Tatav Sayola. She had a very bad false tooth, this girl. V'asala Rabbi Shmuel Shein Shazaf, he made her a gold tooth. Now today you'd say, what is he, from Russia? Like that's how we would look at it, right? He gave her gold tooth. Gold tooth was considered beautiful, right? I mean, Shalom. In other words, that's a change. All right, that's a change. So that's a change. He actually did change it. That's no lot. That would be example of really no. That's not. She didn't have that before. But I think what Rabbi Shmuel was saying, I think the answer to your question is that Rabbi Shmuel is saying is that all Jewish girls are basically beautiful or could easily be beautified with a little help. That's what he's saying. But still, that's considered no lot.
Well, this is also
in this case
poverty. She couldn't afford a gold tooth.
Right. Yeah, I understand. But that was a change. And you looked at it. They sent him the picture. She had the false tooth, and he gave her a gold tooth, and that was considered beautiful. Today we consider it not beautiful, right? But Kishacha Rabbi Shmuel Pasach Alahu Satan, one of the eulogizers there, started to say about Rabbi Shmuel after he died. You Jewish girls should cry for Rabbi Shmuel because he was always in favor of the rights of the Jewish girls and helped to make them. Hamal Bishchen, who dressed you properly. He dressed him properly. Sometimes even the dress would be considered nolad, right? Because she couldn't dress nicely before. She had no means of doing it. Rabbi Shmuel dressed her. That was also nolad. Now, it's not necessarily a tooth in the part of her physical being, but even the clothing can make her look nice too. A man told his wife, "Konim shiyat can't be enough for me. Apparently, he said, "I can't take your cooking. You can't have any enough for me until you give Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Shimon, they're going to eat your food. They have to taste your food. If they don't taste your food, you wouldn't give it to them. You can't have any of me. In other words, I don't have anything to do with you. Let's get divorced until Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel eat your food. Rabbi Yehuda told him, Rabbi Yehuda ate the food. He heard the story and he said, listen, it might be painful to eat her food, to taste her food, but I got to do it. I'm a kavachomer. To make peace between a husband and wife. Torah said in the case of a sota. My name, God's name that was written in holiness, should be raised in the water, the water of curse, right? The water that she's going to drink. So to make shalom there, the suffix, it's only suffix. Remember, a sota, but the whole thing of drinking is when we're not sure. Maybe she committed adultery, maybe she didn't. If you know for sure she committed adultery, she doesn't drink. Divorces her with no ksub, etc. Right? And if there's no Edom Asura, you kill her. But the basic idea, the whole story of sota is if there's a question whether she committed adultery or not, so she has to drink the water in order to determine whether she did or not. So here it's only a suffix. Hashem said, "You can erase my name," which was written in Kedusha, in order to bring peace. Meaning, because if she drinks and it turns out she doesn't die, that turns out she didn't commit adultery, and therefore they can live happily ever after again, after he put her through the whole rigmarole. Va'ani, so all I have to do is taste the food over here. I'm not going to die. So he ate the food. So Rabbi Yehuda ate the food. Rabbi Shimon did not. Rabbi Shimon Lotam, he didn't eat the food. He said, too bad. Amar, Yamusa called Bnei Almana. In other words, he called her Bnei Almana, let them all die. I'm not going to move from here. I'm not going to encourage him to make a netter. In other words, why should I encourage him to make? He made this netter. He says, you can't have enough of me unless you make these rabbis taste the food. Why should I taste the food? All I'm doing is I'm encouraging him to make nadarim like that. Let him go be mater netter. Let him go be mater netter. If I eat the food, I'm just encouraging him. I'm fulfilling it. So let them all die. What do you mean by that? Bnei Almana, by calling it his wife, his children, the sons of an Almana, it means they're cursing him. He's going to die. And then his kids will be Bnei Almana, and Ron says, and they will also die. He's cursing the whole family. Let them all be cursed. Let them be matronetta. I'm not going to encourage this kind of activity. Another story. Got so angry that he says, until you do some chutzpah thing, until you spit at Shmuel, spit in his face. Us, she went. She spit on his clothing. She didn't spit in his face. She spit on his clothing. So, why is that going to help? So Rashi says, the Girs Labach is Raka, but she spit on his clothing, Visharye. And he was matter based on that. In other words, not matter the netter, but he's saying basically she fulfilled the netter. She said, until you spit on Shmuel's garment, he saw that he spit on her and he heard the story, and he said, okay, fine, you fulfilled the condition, and now you can have enough from your husband. And she was, the man's intention was for shame. You're going to go and do something as disgusting as spitting on Shmuel. His kavanah was spit in his face to shame him, meaning to shame Shmuel and to shame yourself by doing that. So and she didn't really spit in his face. Amalei Meirek al-Manid of Shmuel is also Lusarabsi. Just spitting on his clothing is also a big shame. That's also a disgusting thing, and therefore she fulfilled the condition, and now she could have enough from her husband. Another story. Ahu the Amar Ledivisu Kohen. This is also a netter. She had she can't have enough. Anshe Tiri Mu'um Yafa Shabech Bishma Rabyosi. Until you show now the different gears over here. The Bas gears Anshe Tiri Mu'um Yafa Shabech. The Ran has this in the second gear. So Ran brings down both gears. Says in the Bach the gear says, in other words, you can't have enough for me. You're so ugly, you can't have enough for me until you show something nice about yourself to Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yossi. Show something pretty about yourself to Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yossi. This lady was nothing to look at, unfortunately. I guess, she wasn't at the time of Rabbi Shmuel, who could have, Rabbi Shmuel could have beautified her. Until you show something, and as you can't have enough for me until you show something beautiful about yourself to Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yossi. Amar Lahem. So he came for Shmuel Bar Yossi. Amalem Shema Roshana. Maybe she's got a nice head. Amalem no Skalgo, who or Skalgo? No, it's take it again. Skalgo. She's got a round head. It's not a nice looking head. Shema Sarah. Maybe she's got beautiful hair. No, Domal ain't sufficient. It looks like bundles of flax. Her hair does not look good. Shemay knows maybe she's got pretty eyes. Truthus, no, they're also rounded eyes. They're not normal looking eyes. Right? They're not looking eyes. I know she couldn't find anything nice about her looks. Shema's not enough. Maybe she's got nice ears. No, Fulo saying no, they are double the size. They are very large ears. Shema Chutmana. Reminds me of the story, you could speak louder, Pop. She can't hear either. Like Shema Chutmana, maybe she's got a nice nose. Bolamu, no, it's like a pinch nose. It's like a closed nose. It's closed up. It's not a nice looking nose. Shema Safsad, where she's got nice lips. Obo say, no, they're too thick. Shema Sarah, maybe she's got a nice long neck. Shaku, no, she's got a very short neck. It looks like no neck. Shema Krisano, maybe she's got a nice abdomen. Savi, no, it's bloated. She's got a bloated stomach. Doesn't look nice. Shema Raglan, maybe she's got nice feet. Rachavas Kishel Avsa, no, they're as thick as those of a goose. Very not
Flat
like
feet.
not pardon. Flat, yeah, flat, whatever. So we go now. So it's Rachavas Kishel Avsa, yeah. Shema. I think it's about legs. I don't know if it's the feet or the legs. Maybe it means the feet. Yeah. Shema Shmona, maybe she's got a nice name. Lachlucha Shma, they call her dirty, like her soiled. Lachluchas, Luchluch. Amalhen, Yafa Karnosa Lachlucha, she's got a nice name. She Muchleches B'mumin, because she is soiled with blemishes. In other words, what's nice about her is that her name fits her body. That's what's nice about it. So he found something nice about it for Shari and he was Mata. That's how great the rabbis were, that in order to make peace between a husband and wife, he found some excuse, just like before the other that he found. Rav Shmuel says, spitting on him is good enough too, right? Rav Shmuel is also considered a nice, it was also considered a shame. Same over here. This was he found the answer for it.
Because the other rabbis up above, they said, no, I don't want to do this because I'm just encouraging.
That was Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon said that, right? Rav Shimon said, I don't want to encourage that. But the other rabbi said, like everything else, it's machlokas. Rav Yehuda said, in order to bring peace between a husband and wife, he's probably an angry person. Rav Shimon said, no, I don't want to encourage that kind of activity. So two different ways to look at it. So all these were nadarim, right? You made a neder in a certain way, and materneder. So again, in certain cases, we had over here, basically what they did over here was they fulfilled the neder. In other words, this wasn't the Pesach. Before our mission was talking about being a Pesach for a neder, or a mistake of a neder, right? A mistake or a Pesach, or nolad, which doesn't work except it works according to Blazer and Rabbi Shmuel. In these cases over here, Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel and Shmuel fulfilled the neder. Right? He says, you can't have enough for me unless you do such and such and such and such. And the rabbis encouraged us, said, you've done such and such. You showed me something nice about you. You've got a nice name. Your name fits your body. Or, the spit that you spit on my clothing is good enough. Or I'll taste the food and therefore you can have enough from your husband. Now, in the following cases, in the next case that we're going to have, the last case, which ends the parak, tells a story about Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Shmuel, who, again, did things, they did Maisa of Chasidus, of kindness, in order to bring peace between a husband and wife, right? Rabbi Shmuel did that to bring an act of kindness by beautifying the girl there. And Rabbi Shmuel also did an act of kindness. So here we're going to see another act of kindness. So Hubar Bavel, a man from Bavel, the Solik Lar Yisrael, went up to Eretz Yisrael. He married a girl in Eretz Yisrael. Now, of course, since he came from Bavel, people speak with an accent, right? People, when you come from a different country, you don't speak it the way they speak in the country that you're living in now. So Ubar Bavel, the Solik Lar Yisrael, Nasav Issa, he married a woman there. Amala Bishili Trey Talfi. The girsa we have over here, Trey Talfi, means two cow's feet. Fluffim are the hooves of a cow. Make me two cows. See, please make it for me. Bishile Trey Tilfachoy, the girsa is, she made him two lentils. Talfachi, because the way he pronounced Talfi and the way she understood as Talfi as lentils. Rasachala, he fumed at her. He got angry at her. Now that's the girsa that we have. In the Rashi, Right? That's how Rashi looks. Because straight talfi is the gear. So bishlo shesha doesn't lie some cars. Some of a different gear. So is the garsi the Rashi brings down some of the gear that he said make for me. He said for me make for me 2 talfichoy, make for me 2 lentils. He meant make a little bit of lentils, make a couple of lentils for me. And she made 2 lentils. Lentils are very small vegetables, right? Or whatever they are, legumes, whatever you call them. And that's all he made. That's not a meal. 2 little lentils is like having 2 beans. It's not a meal. That's why they get it. So either got angry because she made the wrong thing or because she only made 2. L'machar, so the next day, Amar b'shili griva, make me a large measure of the lentils. So you should have a meal. But he didn't need to say, enough for a feast for 100 people. He just said, make me a good measure. And she made a very large measure, way too much for him to eat. Amallah, right? So she made him too much, and he's probably angry about that too. Tracy, because the next day he said, if I say 2, she'll make me 2 lentils again. So he made bashil, and she made a very large amount. And they figured he just meant make me a large enough measure for a meal, and she made way too much. Amar lazili aisili tre butsini. Bring me 2 butsini. What are butsini? So butsini means are like gourds or melons. Avatiach is melons. Make me 2 melons. Also aisili tre shagi. She brought him 2 lamps because butsini has 2 meanings. Right, Neirus the translation of Neirus is also lamps is also Neirus is also butsini, which is the same as shargi. So he wanted 2 melons, and she brought him 2 lamps. Amrullah, he got so angry. Zil tavri yasan al reisha the baba. Go break them at the top of the door. Go at the top of the gate, at the top of the door. Go break these lamps. He was so angry. He says, go break them. Arosha Pesach. Because he was angry, and she thought, Hava Yosef Baba Ben Buta Baba. Baba Ben Buta, he was a great rabbi, was sitting at the gate. His name was Baba Ben Buta. He was sitting at the gate. But Kadon Dina, he was ruling over a case. He was ruling over some dispute. Ozlas Vitavras Yasma Resha, she broke him on his head. He said, break them at the top of Baba on the gate. And she thought he meant break him on his head. She broke him on his head. Amallah, ma dained of this. What you do over here? What are you breaking these on my head for? Amallah, kach tzivani bali. That's what my husband told me to do. Amar, atos is with some balach. You did the will of your husband. Amakim yotzim chashnei banim kababa babuta. Your Hashem should give you 2 children who will be also like Baba Ben Buta. You broke them on my head. There'll be 2 children like me. And the Ran says here, the last Ran on the right side, and before the new parak, Shnei Banim Gebota, Keneged Train Shargi, because of the 2 lamps, he said you should have two sons like that. Why is the story about this story is not a neder? Notice, you see, this is just a story about the guy got angry at his wife, was mistaken in the language. It's good to marry somebody who speaks your language because you see what can happen. And there's no neder over here, but stories brought down Mashminan. Chasidusei the Bambuta show you the piety of Baba Muta. Yechid Aisi Acho Uvner of Shimon Gamliel with Rabbi Shmuel tells you the story of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Shmuel, who were basically sort of shamed by the neder, but yet they did something nice, something kindness and piety to show you the story of Baba Muta. All right, tomorrow's Mishnah. Tomorrow then we start the new parak, probably the most famous parak of the Dharma Nara Marasa, about how you break a neder of that. This is Hafarsa Dharam. And tomorrow's daf is a rather short daf, Samach Zayin, but it's got a lot of Ran. And on Sunday, make sure when you learn the daf, and it's on the podcast all the way up until the 7th line on Samaches. On Sunday morning, we'll start with the Boilahu, the 7th line on daf Samaches, and the podcast will take you up till there. Shabbat Shalom Lekulam.